I think it's intelligence sharing that it definitely is the million-dollar question. Jonathan Sacerdoti also joining us on the phone from London, I-24 News European correspondent. Intelligence sharing may be the key point of this in this time when it comes to Brussels, because this was expected if we're speaking to anybody who lives in Europe at this point. When it comes to intelligence sharing, does that even happen?
Intelligence sharing, of course, is essential when this threat exists across Europe and when people can travel easily and freely across European borders, as was shown by those attackers who struck Paris back in November. Of course, what we found out from that Paris report, the investigation into those attacks in November that were released recently in the New York Times, is that actually there's a huge problem in intelligence sharing. For example, one specific given, which was almost ridiculous, is that the Arabic names of some of the attackers are transliterated differently between the different nations within Europe. So one might spell a particular sound in Arabic in a different way from another nation because of how they pronounce the letters, which means that having no-fly lists and names at immigration centres are pretty much useless when people can get in simply because of a different spelling of a name. That's, in fact, a charitable way of excusing some of the incompetence of stopping people travelling as freely. We heard about those attackers who perpetrated the Paris attacks in November being able to move and boast about their movement quite freely. We know that they made calls after the particular explosions in Paris and were able to escape across the border to Brussels, even being stopped in their car and then allowed to go on. So there's obviously a giant problem with intelligence sharing. At the same time, we can't be too harsh on the intelligence services. The nature of that exercise, the nature of surveilling people, of keeping an eye on the right people moving around, is constantly one of catching up with what the terrorists are doing. It's like a game of chess. Each side is thinking ahead as to how to beat the other, and as one learns more about the other side, then it's a question of developing new techniques. We also saw in those Paris attacks new use of mobile phones in a way that hadn't been done before by ISIS. One particular way that the intelligence services track terrorists and keep an eye on what they're doing is by intercepting phone calls, by finding mobile phones and looking at the data that is on those phones in order to understand better how these networks operate. And in that example of Paris in November of last year, we saw that they had boxes of unused mobile phones in the flat in Saint-Denis from where I reported for I-24 News, boxes of phones that were unused so that they could simply open fresh phones and evade being detected by the intelligence service.
And speaking of the intelligence service, Jonathan, you're staying with us.